Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I'll be covering Jungle Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver.
Change is good.
Alright, so let's hop right into this guide by first looking at Kha'Zix's pros. Now, Kha'Zix is a champion with some very high snowball potential and very high burst damage. He's a champion that can instantly burst targets, and as long as you can take down those targets and build your items, you'll be able to delete people throughout the game and snowball pretty effectively. You're also a very strong duelist because of the isolated increased damage on your Q ability, and you also have very high mobility from your E ability, which can be reset if you do get it evolved. Then finally, Kha'Zix is pretty great at finding picks as well. If you find a target that is by themselves, you can easily jump on them and delete them, and you can also slow them with your W ability so you can easily catch up to them. Now Kha'Zix, however, like every other champion in League of Legends, of course has its cons as well. Since you are an assassin going for a very high damage build, you'll be very squishy and very vulnerable to crowd control as well. If you do get caught in a crowd control, you usually end up dying pretty quickly because you can't escape, obviously. You're also pretty hard to master as well. Kha'Zix isn't the easiest champion out there, and you're pretty weak when behind as well since you are an assassin. If you don't have the damage to delete people, well, you're going to be pretty ineffective. Then finally, you don't have any hard crowd control either. Now you do have a slow if you do evolve your W, but other than that, all you have is mobility and damage. For my runes, I like to go for Domination and Sorcery, grabbing Electrocute as my keystone. It's really easy to proc this damage on Kha'Zix since you are doing damage really quickly, and it will add some nice extra burst damage into your combos and really help you assassinate people. I then like to get Sudden Impact, so whenever I leap onto a target I get some added lethality, and then I get Zombie Ward, so whenever I kill a ward I get one of my own just to provide a little bit of extra vision. Then I finish that up by getting Relentless Hunter, so my takedowns give me permanent out of combat movement speed so I can roam around just a little bit quicker as well. Then in the sorcery side I go for Celerity so I get extra movement speed, and Water Walking so I get extra movement speed and AD when I am in the river. These runes are basically all about getting as much damage as possible while also increasing your mobility. You do also have the option of going for something like Precision instead of Sorcery, but I really like that extra movement speed and I'm a big fan of it on Kha'Zix. Now for your summoner spells, you'll first of course want to pick up Flash. This will give you a nice chunk of extra mobility, and it's great for escaping bad situations, or you can use it as an extra engage if your E ability is on cooldown. Then since you will be of course jungling, you want to make sure you pick up Smite as well. This is needed so you can actually make it through the jungle and keep yourself sustained, and it's also great for securing objectives like Dragon and Baron. It is also required to buy your jungler item in the first place, so as a jungler you basically have no option but to take Smite. Now let's look at your abilities, and your first one is your passive, Unseen Threat. This is a really strong passive because it will increase your burst damage. Whenever the enemy team loses sight of you, your next basic attack will deal some extra damage and has a 20% bonus AD ratio on the target, and also slows them by 25%. This extra chunk of damage as well as the slow can make your ganks a lot more effective. This passive also marks targets as isolated, so your abilities like your Q will also do more damage onto those targets, so you want to try to get onto the isolated ones as much as you can. Your Q ability is Taste Their Fear, which does a really nice chunk of extra burst damage. This ability has a 120% bonus AD ratio and even does 65% more against isolated targets. This is by far your best ability for deleting those single targets since it does a really high amount of AD, but it's also great when you do evolve it because it gains 50 bonus range and 45% of the cooldown is refunded if used on an isolated target. If you're looking to 1v1 targets and you really want to spend a lot of time dueling, then your Q ability will definitely be one of the best ones that you could evolve early on in the game. You will also want to max it first because it is by far your best source of damage, and it's great for clearing through the jungle and adding damage onto those targets when you are ganking. Your W ability is Void Spike, and this is a really nice range damage ability that can also heal you. The ability also has a 100% bonus AD ratio, so the damage from range is actually pretty significant. The heal, however, is only if you are within the detonation radius, so unless you are close to the target you won't receive the healing, but it is great for clearing through jungle camps because obviously you will be near those. When you evolve this ability, it instead fires 3 clusters in a cone and slows targets by 40% and also grants sight of them for 2 seconds. Against isolated targets, the slow instead will be 80%, so it is a really strong ability to catch up to targets if you do evolve Spike Racks. Against really mobile teams, or if I need to add some poke damage into my comp, then I'll usually evolve my Spike Racks rather early on. Kha'Zix's E ability is Leap, which is a really solid engage and disengage. It gives Kha'Zix a lot of mobility, and since he does a lot of damage in a melee range, this is a great way to get on top of your target so you can get off your damage. Now it doesn't do a lot of damage on its own, it only has a 20% bonus AD ratio, but your W has 100 and your Q has 120, so those are the abilities that will do the damage for you. This ability is also amazing when you do evolve it because it does get increased range and the cooldown is reset on an enemy champion takedown. It acts just like Tristana's Rocket Leap. If you do get a kill, it resets and you can jump to the next target, or you can jump out and disengage. You'll therefore usually want to go into a team fight when you know you're going to get the reset so you can jump from target to target or jump out after you delete one squishy champion. Your ultimate is Void Assault, which is a mixed ability that empowers your abilities and lets Kha'Zix stealth as well. When you activate this ability, you'll get invisibility for 1.5 seconds and gain your passive as well, and also 40% bonus movement speed and ghost. After 2 seconds of leaving stealth, you can also activate this a second time at no cost. Now this ultimate does get better when you evolve it, of course, because when you are out of combat, if you do go into a brush, you'll automatically gain stealth, so this is a great way to invade the enemy jungler if you do evolve this ability first. You can apply a ton of pressure on the enemy. So this is a great ability when you're ganking because you can use this to gain stealth before you go into the lane, so you'll be unseen. It's a great way to catch the enemy off guard. Now in teamfights, you can also activate this to go through the teamfight as well so people can't see you and get onto the squishier targets as well. This will also give you unseen threat as well, so it will significantly increase your damage when you do get to that target. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. You'll then want to focus on maxing your Q ability first because it is your highest single target damaging ability and it's great at assassinating people and clearing through the jungle. I'd then recommend focus on maxing your W ability second. This will give you some really nice poke damage as well because it does have a 100% AD ratio and can actually give a nice chunk of damage from ranged. Then that of course means you want to max your E ability last. It's primarily used for mobility, it's not so much used for damage, so therefore you just need an early point at level 3 and then max it last. Now as for your evolution order, pretty much all of them are viable. If you're looking to spend a lot of the time trying to 1v1 the enemies, then you may want to go for your Q ability first so you can actually burst the targets down and get a bunch of the cooldown refunded. Now my personal favorite to take first, however, is my ultimate. It's really strong if you want to spend a lot of the time in the enemy's jungle and try to kill the enemy jungler. Since you will be going stealth every time you go in a brush, it can also apply a lot of map pressure and it's really solid on Kha'Zix. Now you could always go for your W first as well because it's great for picks and it does give a really nice slow. You will get 3 cones instead, so it's great at poking an entire team. Now as for my E ability, I don't take it first too much myself, but it's great to take either second or third. The reset it provides will be great for jumping from target to target. Now for my recommendation, I'd take either the ultimate or the W ability first. Usually I would go for the ultimate, then take the other one and follow it up with your E ability so you can get resets. Taking Q pretty much always used to be meta, but now it's not as strong in my opinion. Now as for my jungle route, I usually like to take the first buff wherever my bot lane is. In this case, it was the red buff. Once I take down my first buff, I'll go to my wolves, kill that camp, and then take the other buff. This is going to give you level 3 really quickly, and of course you're going to have those double buffs so you can start ganking right away. Kha'Zix doesn't have the best jungle clear early on, so I would recommend going for this clear, getting your level 3 and start ganking. Once you have some AoE with your W, and if you go for a Tiamat, then you can start going for those full clears much easier. When you're ganking lanes, you want to use your leap ability for mobility. Use it to jump onto the enemy champions and then use Taste Their Fear, which is your Q ability when they are isolated, for burst damage. You should also have your passive Unseen Threat when you are going into the lane as well, which will give a nice slow on that champion and also deal some extra damage. When you are level 6, you'll also be able to use your Void Assault to get into the lane stealthed. This can be a great way to catch the lane off guard, so if you do have it available, it's definitely worth considering using, and it will completely catch them off guard. Now when you're teamfighting on Kha'Zix, the first thing I have to say is be patient. You are a very squishy assassin, so if you do jump into a teamfight too early on, you will get crowd controlled and die pretty much instantly. Therefore, like I said, be very patient and pick your timing properly. If you can, try and find an isolated target that you can delete with your Q ability's damage. You do excel as a cleanup artist as well, so try to wait until cooldowns are down or people are low on the enemy team so you can easily clean them up and jump from target to target. Now let's look at a couple hard matchups, and first up is Rammus. Rammus is going to be a really hard matchup for you because he's going to build a ton of armor early on and you're pretty much not going to be able to fight him while he makes you kill yourself with a Thornmail. He's also got some really strong mobility as well, so whenever you jump into a lane, he's going to usually try to roll up behind you and taunt you, so you have to be very careful and make sure you know where he is before you go into a lane. For the next hard matchup, I've got Skarner. This is another fairly tanky champion that you won't be able to burst down too easily, but he's got even more damage than Rammus. The main reason he is a hard matchup, however, is if you do jump into a team fight, if he has his ultimate available, he's just going to grab you and his team is going to destroy you while you can't even move. Therefore, be very careful when Skarner is around, and you usually won't want to jump near him when he does have his ultimate available. Another hard matchup for you is going to be Udyr. This guy's got a ton of damage and he's a really strong duelist, so if you try to 1v1 him, usually you're going to come out on the bottom side. You'll therefore not really want to fight Udyr too much in a 1v1 situation. You are a better ganker because he is very kiteable, and keep in mind you can even help kite him with your W ability if you do evolve it. And for the last hard matchup here, I've got Warwick. He's another champion that's a really strong duelist because he does have some pretty decent tankiness, a lot of sustain, and some rather strong damage as well. You'll therefore usually not want to 1v1 Warwick too much, especially if he has his ultimate. He's also a champion that can get a ton of mobility if people are low as well, so try to keep track of where he is on the map because if people get low in a lane near ganking, he can make it there really quickly. Alright, now let's finish this off with the item build, which starts with a Hunter's Machete, refillable potion, and a warding totem. Since you are primarily a single target damage champion, the Hunter's Machete is going to work great on Kha'Zix and make it through those single camps really quickly. You'll then have that refillable for a little bit of extra sustain, and then the warding totem to help provide some vision. For your core build, you want to go for a Skirmisher Saber enchanted with Warrior, a Duskblade, and then your choice of boots. This is going to give you a nice chunk of cooldown reduction right off the bat with a bunch of attack damage and some really nice lethality and extra damage from the Duskblade. This is going to make you a very bursty champion, and with just these two items you can start taking down targets pretty much instantly. Now for your boots, you can pretty much get away with any, but I definitely like boots and mobility the most since you will get more movement speed for roaming around and ganking, but if you need defensives, go for Ninja Tabbies or Merc Treads. Now for your item pool, you have a bunch of really solid options, but usually you'll want to try to increase your damage as much as possible. Therefore, if you're against a very squishy team, you may want to consider getting a Yumu's or an Edge of Night. Both add lethality and attack damage and can help you delete those targets really quickly. The Yumu's will give you a bit of extra mobility, and the Edge of Night is great as well because you can channel it for a spell shield, which is great when you do jump into an enemy. Now if you're instead looking to get through a bunch of armor, you can get either the Black Cleaver or an LDR. On Kha'Zix, I'll usually like to go for the Black Cleaver just to cap my cooldown reduction and get that armor shred, but the LDR is fantastic against a really tanky team that has a ton of armor. If you instead want a bit more burst damage with an activation and a little bit of lifesteal, you could always go for a Ravenous Hydra. It used to be an item I took on Kha'Zix a lot more often than I do now, but it is still pretty viable. Then finally, if you want items that are a bit more defensive, you can get either the Guardian Angel or a Maw. The Guardian Angel is one of my favorites because it will bring you back to life if you do end up dying, but the Maw is great against AP assassins as well because you will get a really nice shield that protects you from magic damage if you do take a bunch of burst. Either way, I'll usually grab my core items and then get something like a Yumu's and finish up with some defensives later on. And that's all I've got for Jungle Kha'Zix. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and visit my video description below. I have a link to all my social medias and I do also have a Discord server, so that's one you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.